Matt Rhule's notorious for slow starts in his first season that end with only 1 or 2 wins, but he built that rep at Temple and Baylor. It's one thing to lose double-digit games at a smaller program, but Nebraska just came off their worst effort in 60 years, and they still managed to come out on top in 4 and finish with a road win over Iowa in the finale. The scheme's totally different. There are at least 8 new additions that'll break into the 2 deep, and the only thing we're all sure of is that there's enough talent on this roster to put up a fight against anybody on this schedule. Making this prediction's tough because outside of Michigan, I don't see a single guaranteed loss, and every Power 5 game will have close to a 10-point spread or less. But as you know, I don't play for the team, I'm just here to give you my picks. So today, we're going to talk about why there's so much hype around Rhule in year 1. We'll see what Vegas thinks about Nebraska making a bowl game, and we'll go through the week-by-week schedule to find out what I think the record will be once it's all said and done. But what's up, guys? I'm Connor Hayden, and this is Corn Crazed. If you're a fan of Nebraska or the Big Ten, make sure you hit the subscribe button below because I spend hours making these videos for you, and subbing to the channel tells YouTube to share the video with more college football fans just like us, which means I can make more of them. And if you think Nebraska can pull off a top 25 upset this year, hit the like button for good luck. But now, let's get into it.
Thompson lines up, goes deep, got a man, touchdown!
There were some obvious issues with last year's team, and I think part of the reason there's so much hype and excitement around this new staff is that they seem to have a good understanding of what those issues were and how they can correct them. So let's talk about 3 big ones. You look back to Whipple's offense that tried to score a ton through the air, but didn't put the O-line in the best position to succeed. They completely neglected the run game that would have taken pressure off Casey, and ultimately, it resulted in less than 350 yards a game. Now, there's an obvious commitment to the run game. We'll see formations with a fullback, multiple tight ends, and I guess some with 2 running backs on each side of Sims. The play calling is geared towards the line's strengths, and instead of trying to score as fast as possible, Satterfield's going to try to control the clock like we've seen some of the other really good teams in the Big Ten do. Another issue was that once QB1 went down, there wasn't anybody else who could lead the offense consistently. Both backups combined only completed 50% of their passes, averaged less than 3.5 yards per play, and had a -1 TD to interception ratio. The other day, Rhule said either Harburg or Purdy could win as a starter, and more reps in practice and prep work for all 3 potential backups should at the very least give the offense a chance in a worst-case scenario. And the last major issue that was changed by default and has so many fans hyped up is the positive energy coming from these coaches. Frost's staff knew that 2022 was the last chance to get things right, but there wasn't a belief that certain coaches would be successful. Rhule wasn't happy with Whipple abandoning the run, Bush questioned Shenander's defensive calls, and Joseph wasn't a fan of Frost's approach in practice. And now, for the first time in who knows how long, the entire staff's on the same page and has fully bought into their head coach's vision. In the spring, Vegas releases the projected win totals for every team in college football based on how many games they'd be favorites to win. And this year, Nebraska's line sits at under 6.5 for -140 odds, meaning they're expected to win 6 games, and if they get to 7 or any more than that, it'd be a surprise. I did the math on the past 5 years, and the team averaged 2.5 wins less than the projection. So if the trend continues, we're going to see another 4-win season, but we know it won't. Matt Rhule did a complete 180 when he flipped the direction of this program, and losing games against Group of 5 schools isn't in the cards. I'm not going to drown you in Kool-Aid and tell you this team can win the Big Ten, but if the talent on this roster can do their job, cut back on crucial errors, and the play calling keeps them alive till the 4th quarter, we're in for 12 really good games this season, and unlike last year, you won't have to turn any of them off before they're over. I'm going to run through the entire schedule game by game to let you know a little bit about each opponent, tell you who I think wins that week, and on the graphic, you're going to see my ratings for their offense, defense, special teams, and coaching staff with my prediction for their record at the end of the season listed down there at the bottom. Now, does all that make sense? Perfect. Then let's get to it. 831 is on the road in Minneapolis to take on a Minnesota team in their 7th year with PJ Fleck, who's finished with at least 9 wins, 3 out of the last 4 seasons. I wouldn't call this the ideal opening game for a new coach, but Minnesota's breaking in 3 new starters on the O-line after 2 left for the NFL, and the defense has to replace 4 key pieces for the same reason. The last time Nebraska beat these guys on the road was 2015, and the last 3 matchups were all 7-point losses. PJ usually has the more disciplined and prepared team, but they've kept this win streak alive by closing out in the 4th quarter. If you look back to last year's game when Casey was out, the run game dominated the first half and they were up 10 going into the 3rd quarter. But the typical mistakes we saw happen for years eventually made their way in, and Fleck's offense came back to win it with a 10-point 4th quarter. Minnesota's been known to struggle in their first few games, and having to prepare for an entirely new scheme with a defense ready to exploit a less experienced O-line is enough to get me excited. It'll be a battle to the end, but I'm calling this a win in week 1. Game 2 is another road banger, but this time it's against an old school rival with the most polarizing head coach in America. And it doesn't matter if they lose to TCU by 25, because that stadium and the entire city is going to be going crazy for Deion's first home game against their most hated rival. Back-to-back road games are tough, but playing on Thursday the week before gives them 2 extra days to recover and start working on the game plan. I know we all have low expectations for Colorado this year, and it's justified given their entirely new roster of guys who've never played together. But they've still got some really experienced coordinators, an NFL quarterback, and one of the best skill players in the entire country in Travis Hunter. Right now, Nebraska's an 8-point favorite, even though they've got to play in a hostile environment, but I can promise you it's not going to be easy. I'm guessing that Satterfield will get the most out of the offense when he needs it in the 4th quarter, and this team heads back to Lincoln 2-0. There are 2 kinds of Northern Illinois teams. The one that comes to Lincoln and gets beat down by 5 touchdowns in 2019, and then the one that shows up to pull the upset and put the nail in the coffin during Mike Riley's final season. It's easy to discredit these guys after finishing with only 3 wins last year, but they were down bad with injuries, and they're going to look a lot better now with a healthy Rocky Lombardi, who's thrown for over 3,200 yards in just 17 games. Add in the return of their 1,000-yard plus receiver and 4 starters on arguably the best O-line in the MAC, and we're talking about an offense with potential to score at least 21. On defense, there were some struggles, and that unit gave up almost 400 yards a game, but they had to play a bunch of underclassmen. With 7 starters back and 3 transfers in who've got starting experience at Virginia Tech, Kansas, and Lafayette, they could give Nebraska's offense some problems if they're not locked in. Coming off a massive week 1 against Minnesota and a huge rivalry game in Boulder with tons of emotions flowing means this could be a letdown spot, but this staff's been here before and they should be able to get the team up and energized for their first game in Lincoln. It might not be flashy, but I'll still expect a win. Nebraska won't be ranked at this point, but we can still call it a trap game. Michigan comes to town in just a week, and the confidence that they can beat anybody now that they're undefeated is starting to set in. Louisiana Tech's on a 15-game road losing streak, but Sonny Cumbie's in his 2nd year as head coach, and he picked up Hank Bachmeier from the portal after starting 29 games and throwing for over 6,500 yards at Boise State. Give him 8 returning starters, including 2 All-Conference USA picks at running back and receiver, and we're talking about an offense that'll be able to score plenty. The defense only returns 4 starters, and they couldn't stop the run to save their life last year, so a heavy run plan should be enough to set the tone and give Sims the chance to run a ton of clock en route to a 2-touchdown victory. Now, for the first time since 2016, we're talking about a 4-0 team. The national media's absolutely cashing out with clickbait articles and YouTube videos calling Matt Rhule a miracle worker and Jeff Sims a legit threat to win the Heisman. Fox is running 40 commercials an hour telling the whole world Nebraska's back, while 6,000 superfans on Twitter fire off 20 tweets a minute to every account that's posted Nebraska sucks sometime in the past 5 years. This ride's been fun and it's not over yet, but we got to pause for a second to make sure we're all wearing our seatbelts because the number 2 team in America is on their way. There's something special about a night game at home. The players have all day to visualize a win and let their emotions ramp up while they watch other teams pull off upsets around the country. Fans spend the day drinking, living their best life, and getting all amped up to cause a scene in the stands that's only going to make it harder for the visitor to focus on the task at hand. Just look back to the home night game 2 years ago when Michigan barely made it out with a 3-point win. Unfortunately, Fox ruined primetime college football, so Nebraska won't have that edge. The emotions are still going to be high, but there's an adrenaline cap when you've got to play a game at 11 a.m. Michigan's coming in undefeated, riding a 16-game Big Ten win streak. They've got 7 first-team preseason All-Big Ten caliber guys and a total of 21 returning starters if you include the huge transfer class they brought in. The offense finished 24th nationally last year, but that was in McCarthy's first season as a starter, and he's only getting better with experience. We all know how great their defense has been, and if Rhule can just keep his team focused the entire way through and not let it get away from him before the fourth quarter, I think we'd all be satisfied. And 4-1's nothing to be ashamed of. Now this spot's tricky. Nebraska laid it all out against one of the top teams in the country, and you know they're feeling drained both physically and emotionally. Playing a tough Illinois team in Champaign at night on a short week is probably the worst scenario you could ask for. Bielema started hot in this series, going 2-0 against Frost, but he's got to replace some major pieces. Start off with the fact that his star DC, who helped build a top 3 unit, left for Purdue. Then add in the losses. 12 starters took off for the NFL, and replacing that production right away isn't going to be easy. The offense breaks in a first-year starter at QB with Luke Altmaier, a first-year starter at running back, and 3 new linemen. But the receiving core returns 3 guys who all had at least 30 catches, and they could challenge Minnesota to be the best in the division. The defense has to replace 75% of the secondary, 2 linebackers, and their starting nose. But how much is that going to matter against offenses that want to run it? Both ends are on the preseason first-team All-Big Ten list, and the linebacker room returns a ton of experience. This will be another game that goes down to the wire, but the timing's terrible, and with a very similar matchup talent-wise, I'm giving the edge to the home team. Nebraska falls to 4-2. The bye week couldn't come at a better time. Playing 2 of the toughest games of the year back-to-back on a short week means players need rest and they got to get healthy. With 4 wins at this point, they're only 2 away from bowl eligibility, and finishing 2-4 would be a little bit of a letdown after such a hot start, but totally acceptable in most of our eyes. The hype's died down a little. We're all back to reality after living on a high from the 4-0 run, and this next game's a freebie if you don't give it away with stupid mistakes. It's hard to believe that Northwestern lost to Southern Illinois and Miami, Ohio in the same season, but even worse, their lone victory, I'm not even going to say it. I'm pretty sure this is the worst team in the Big Ten, but that doesn't mean they won't pull off a couple upsets this year. I don't know much about the gay hazing or what the culture's been like in Evanston, but losing Fitz and replacing him with a guy who's never been a head coach cannot be good for the win total. On offense, there were some big losses like Evan Hull, who ran for almost 1,500 yards, Peter Skoronsky, who was a first-round pick in the draft, and 2 of their top receivers. But Ben Bryant transferred in from Cincy to take the QB job, and 2 receiver transfers from Michigan and ASU should make for a better passing game. I'm not saying this offense is going to be good, but they should be able to improve on their 13-point average. Their defense returns 8 starters and picked up a much better coordinator in David Braun, who won 2 national championships in the same role at North Dakota State. Both teams are off a bye, but Nebraska's going to be double pissed, 1 because of the loss in Ireland, and 2 because they're on a 2-game losing streak. The home team will win, cover the spread, and pick up win number 5. Purdue's another team that could help pad the stats. A first-year head coach who spent the last 7 years as a defensive coordinator is going to remodel a program that thrived under Jeff Brom. Graham Harrell comes in from West Virginia to run the offense, and Hudson Card transferred in from Texas to pick up where Aiden O'Connell left off. The scheme's going to be different, but with 5 transfers who will take on starting roles, it wasn't going to be a smooth transition anyway. Ryan Walters worked miracles, turning Illinois into a defensive power in only his second season, but how fast can he work that magic here? Nebraska will be relatively healthy, and the kinks should be worked out at this point. So Purdue's going to have to stop another strong run game after playing Virginia Tech, Syracuse, Wisconsin, Illinois, Iowa, and Ohio State. I'm sure they can get back to winning 8 games with a strong D, but they just don't have the talent to do it right now. The Boilermakers won't be going to a bowl game, but with a win this week, Nebraska will be. Riding a 2-game win streak with emotions flowing again, Nebraska heads into East Lansing. But for some reason, they're a 3-point dog. Maybe it's tougher to play in the cold, or maybe Mel Tucker is Nebraska's kryptonite. The Spartans were terrible last year, but they still managed to pull off upsets over Wisconsin and Illinois later in the season, and I think that late season growth plays a big role here. There's a new quarterback, new running back, and new receiving core, but by November, they're going to be dialed in. The defense returned 7 starters, and with this being their senior day since the final home games actually being played in Detroit, these guys are going to play the best they have all year. It'll be a nail-biter, but MSU gets 1 game closer to bowl eligibility. Back to Memorial Stadium for another crossover game against Maryland, who's got one of the best QBs in the conference. Technically, only 5 starters return on offense, but that's deceptive because they got guys in from FIU, West Virginia, and LSU to help out on the line and at receiver. But the most underrated name on the whole offense is Roman Hemby, who ran for almost 1,000 yards last year as a redshirt freshman. The defense does enough to keep games close when the offense can score, but the entire D-line had to be replaced and 2 corners graduated, so there might be a little drop-off for the unit that ranked 43rd last year. This matchup's great for a run-heavy offense, and the D should be able to force enough problems for Talia that the offense sputters and they can't find consistency. Add in the fact that Maryland has to play Penn State the week before and Michigan the week after, and you've got another prime opportunity for the home team to win in Memorial Stadium. We're down to the final 2 weeks, but the bowl trip's secured, and the only other achievement to check off this list is to win the West. There's still hope it can happen, but Wisconsin's the front runner and a 10-point home favorite for a reason. If Nebraska couldn't get Rhule, I think the second best choice would have been Luke Fickell, and he would have been a lot cheaper too. Maybe he's got some frustrations to take out this week, or maybe their 18 returning starters know how important it is to beat their rival for the 30th time in a row. Tanner Mordecai and Braylon Allen are both Heisman contenders at this point in the season, and 3 new transfers at receiver are making this offense more dynamic than it's ever been. The defense that had some struggles last year returns 8 starters and is led by the former Michigan State DC who worked under Mark D'Antonio and knows how to defend well-balanced offenses in the Big Ten. This Wisconsin team's out for blood, and getting Nebraska at home late in November after playing Indiana and Northwestern couldn't be scripted any better for a team in pursuit of a Big Ten championship. Another good effort, but another loss. Another season coming to an end the day after Thanksgiving, and Iowa's got revenge on their minds. The terrible offense from a year ago returns 9 starters, including their number 1 receiver, and they added Michigan transfers Cade McNamara at QB and Eric All at tight end. I don't even have to look at the defense to tell you they're going to be elite, and the special teams that finishes in the top 10 nationally every year is going to compete for that number 1 spot once again. It'll come down to ball control, turnovers, and penalties, but with more depth to get him through the season and a coach who's been building his program for 25 years, Iowa's going to come out on top in another 1-score game. That would mean Nebraska finishes with a 7-5 record in the regular season with a chance to get to 8 in their bowl game, which would be an outstanding season for this new staff in their first year. The Guaranteed Rate Bowl would be in Phoenix the day after Christmas against a 6 or 7 win Big 12 team, so I guess Oklahoma State, UCF, or Kansas. And honestly, any of those would make for a really good storyline. But I want to know what you think, so let me know in the comments below. Does a 7-win season seem realistic, or is this a true rebuilding year? What do you think the most likely upset is between Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa? And if you could only have one win, which team do you want to see Nebraska beat? I think I got to go with Iowa, but I know a lot of you are going to be saying Colorado in the comments. But that's all I've got for today. So until next time, thank you for being here, and I'll see you in the next one. Go Big Red.